What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ preview for UFC 287, which goes down tomorrow night here in my home state of Florida, down there in South Florida, which you know means we could have some bad judging, Pete.
What a way to kick it off. It could be an interesting card. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. Surprised you're not going to the event, Jason.
I looked, me and the fellas thought, then we saw those ticket prices, and we said, yep, we'll watch that show here in Tampa.
Really, huh?
Dude, it was like $600 for the last row in the upper deck.
Yeah, forget that.
Dude, look, we both love combat sports, but the one thing that has happened with the UFC over the last year is they have and look, they're getting these ticket points, but it's hard for me, even someone, who I feel like I live a comfortable lifestyle, that goes, I can't justify that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, especially if you wanted to go with some friends and family, that's crazy. It's nice when you're working media because you get to go and watch the events and then cover the sport. But as far as like going and casually hanging out, man, it's expensive. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's because that's the Masvidal card and it's in Florida. Typically, Florida cards are very weird, right? They're very weird. They're hit or miss. And I think having a guy with Masvidal's type of star power on the card is why they're kind of astronomical ticket prices.
I mean, look, and overall, it's a great fight card. I mean, let's talk about it. Top to bottom, it's a great fight card. Before we kind of start getting into breaking the fights, of course, we'll be here for the next hour. Appreciate everyone tuning in here. If you're watching us live here on YouTube, or if you're watching or listening to us after the fact, we appreciate that as well. Of course, a great way to show your support for what me and Pete are doing here. Hit that subscribe button, whether you're watching us on YouTube or if you're listening to us on the podcast channels, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Rate, review, we do appreciate that. And of course, if you're watching this after the fact, you got a comment, leave those in the comment section. Myself or Pete will get back to you once. I'm always checking that. Usually Friday nights are my night where enjoying a couple of cocktails, and so I might be sitting at the bar just seeing what those comments might be. But we appreciate everyone tuning in. As we look at kind of the DFS aspect of this fight card, top to bottom. Look, I think tough to avoid the main event in GPPs. I'll talk about my game theory in terms of the main event when we start talking about that main event here in a little bit. There's a couple fights I just look at from a ceiling aspect. I kind of question whether we can get to 100 points when we're talking about a 13 fight card. Yanez Font's one of them. Gastelum Curtis is another one of them. On DraftKings, I don't know how the hell you get to chase Sherman at 8,800, broken price tag because of the fight change there, and the UFC doing him absolutely no favors, and a complete drastic change of style between the two opponents of Chris Barnett to Karl Williams. And then, of course, on the FanDuel side of the fight, Jacqueline, broken price tag. If you're playing on FanDuel tomorrow, it's going to be kind of hard not to just throw her into a lineup at $11. But I do think that, but then, I really like Gilbert Burns to win, but I'm like, God, much easier for me to get there on a FanDuel slate than is it to get me on a DraftKings slate at 9,600.
Yeah, for sure. It's a weird type of DFS card, and I have to be honest, it's not my favorite. I like the card from a viewing aspect. I like the card from a betting aspect. Trying to take it fight by fight, not getting too greedy when it comes to parlays, because I do think that there are some interesting underdogs here that could come through, and there aren't too many confident underdogs. I have several of them circled with the correct game plan and the correct path to victory. They can actually go out there and spoil the fight for their opponent. It's just it's a weird week for me, and I think the salaries are kind of screwing up. So what that's doing is it's funneling ownership to fighters that naturally wouldn't be as concentrated, and it's kind of screwing some things up. And you have a massive leverage play in Chase Sherman at 8,800. I'm not getting there. I'm just not going to do it. He could win the fight. He could pick up a TKO, but he's not really a finisher. You know what I mean? He's more of a volume guy. He's not a one-hitter quitter. And outside of Karl Williams gassing out, it's kind of tough to envision him being okay, in a decision type of manner to win that fight. So it is heavyweight in MMA, so you don't necessarily know anything could happen. But as far as the salaries and everything, it's just I was hoping to have a little bit more meat on the bone for some of my lineups, and I feel like I'm kind of getting a little bit of the same concentrated players. So I'm gonna have to try to get a little bit different. Gonna go back, watch the weigh-ins and everything. But through social media, there's a couple people that I do like this week.
Look, you know me. I don't start filling out lineups till I talk to you because I gotta see where my guy Pete's at. See maybe if we're on the same page, maybe we're a little bit different. We'll talk about that. Let's get right into the main event. We got the rematch here. Rematch in MMA. Of course, these guys. This will be the fourth time they now compete against each other. Izzy and Pereira. Izzy, slight betting favorite here, minus 135, plus 115 for Alex over there on DraftKings. 8,300 for Izzy, 7,900 for Alex, and then $20 for Izzy on FanDuel, $19 for Alex. And, look, this is because of the price point, Pete, it's going to be tough to get away from putting these guys in my line. But this is what I was mentioning about my little game theory in terms of the main event is I'm going to probably put my exposure probably around 35% to each guys. So when we're talking about multi-entry GPP lineups, I do have a way to get different in the field because I do think that both these guys are going to be massive popular.
Yeah, I think that for me, the main event's going to be pretty hard to get away from. Whether it's the same type of fight that goes on or a completely different one. I just think that, high 7 and mid 8 range is kind of broken for 5-round nature, especially when we know the history between these guys. And we know the finishing potential that Alex Pereira does have. And we've seen he seems to have Israel Adesanya's number. And, the previous fight was very strange because you had Israel Adesanya putting together a pretty well-rounded performance for the most part. And then whether it's a lapse in judgment or it's just 25 minutes is a very long time. I'm personally not a fan of 25-minute fights. I have to tell you. A lot of my friends disagree with me, but I think for MMA, there's too much shit that can go wrong in 25 minutes. So you have to be so perfect for 25 minutes. And we see all the time, like, whoever's better for 24 minutes, and then the final minute, something crazy happens. It's just like, it's so hard to be perfect in such a demanding sport like that. And Israel Adesanya got hit with a barrage of punches and was ultimately finished after putting together a pretty solid performance. But the mental edge 1000% goes behind Alex Pereira. Here at 7,900, he knows Israel Adesanya. He has the mental edge over where, like, Izzy, no matter what he does, even if he's beating, Alex for majority of the fight, it just seems like Alex is like the boogeyman to him and lands a combination, lands something, and whether the judges are swayed by him or he ends up, shutting out your lights with a left hook. It's hard for me not to go back to the well with Alex Pereira because for me to think that Israel Adesanya is just going to devote his entire training camp to wrestling, yes, that's the style that's going to beat Alex Pereira. I'm telling you right now, that is the style that's going to beat him. If Hamza Shemaev were to fight Alex Pereira, he would beat Alex Pereira pretty badly. And it just comes down to how fast can Izzy really, develop that wrestling? The wrestling is fine, but it was kind of stifled once Alex understood that Izzy was trying to mix some things up. We did see Izzy tried to go to the takedown well 4 times, was only successful with one of them. Had 6 minutes of control time. A lot of that was against the cage as well. I would say that Izzy's going to try to blend it more. He's going to try to blend it more. And, even Izzy didn't look the best when he got, reversed and taken down as well. So I do think that Alex Pereira, for me, at 7,900 is going to be a priority play. But this is the number 1 and number 2 guys within a division. So I'll be damned if I'm not going to get exposure to both sides. But obviously my lean is with Alex Pereira here. I think that he actually might go out there and put together a very, very strong performance. And, I don't really like backing guys that have been knocked out so recently, never mind against the same opponent. So, yeah, give me Alex Pereira here at 7,900.
For me, it's a slight lean to Izzy. Look, I'm not expecting that we're magically going to see Izzy become a wrestler. Do we? Yeah. Let's not forget, where's he trained? City kickboxing. Like when you think city kickboxing, Pete, I don't think wrestling. I don't like. Look at that entire team. What about that team makes you think wrestling?
Well, I tell you, Alex Volkanovski's a stud. So he trains at so many gyms over there. So I don't even know between Australia and New Zealand. So he's kind of like debatable if he's even, really a part of City Kickboxing. But I get what you're saying. Unless it's in tiny print, I don't see wrestling anywhere a part of that
No,
name.
no, I don't. I mean, but I just, to me, is if you go back and you watch that first fight, take out the fifth round, and I look, I get you can't take out the fifth round, but Izzy was on his way to a 25-minute decision before he got caught. I just think he's a better mixed martial artist. But in terms of DFS, yeah, I want to get to both sides. Looking at the prop bets before we kind of move over to the next one here,
Yeah.
look, I kind of do look at more of that decision props more than anything else. Izzy plus 175, Alex is plus 450. By the way, fight goes the distance is plus 120.
Yeah, I don't see it going the distance. I got to tell you, I just don't. And it's there's a lot on the line, and that could lead to somebody making a mistake. I think that Izzy's extremely desperate, and desperate times call for desperate measures. So we could see Izzy go out there and get super aggressive en route to finishing Alex Pereira. We did see him drop him essentially. He buckled him. He buckled Alex Pereira at the end of the round and almost sat him down in a chair. So if Izzy goes out there and it's like, nah, I'm Terminator right now, and he's gonna stalk him, Pereira is just huge. It's kind of hard to do that when Bigfoot's standing in the middle of the cage, and then he's just clubbing you with left hand. So um, I think that whether it's Izzy initiating it and getting a little bit too over aggressive, I think we're going to see a finish here. And I think Alex Pereira is going to, unfortunately, still be the champion.
Yeah, and then I think that then really the question becomes is he the best middleweight in the world? Because I think there are some people, I will tell you, there are people I've talked to in South Florida, and are they biased? Yes, no question about it. There's a lot of people that believe the best 185-pound fighter in the world doesn't even fight the UFC.
Yeah, you're probably right. But no, I mean, yeah, right at this moment, yes. But I want my boy Hamzat to get the fights that he needs, and he really blew his opportunity against Nate Diaz to catapult him into
Yeah.
superstardom. He's already a star, but he blew that opportunity, and we'll have to see how he is at middleweight going forward. But I think that he's the guy that's going to be the reigning champ for a while.
Let's move over to the co-main event. You got Gilbert Burns taking on Jorge Masvidal. Gilbert Burns, a minus 475 betting favorite, plus 350 for Jorge Masvidal. Overall on DraftKings, you got 9,600 for Gilbert Burns, 6,600 for Jorge, and then 23 and 8 respectively over there on FanDuel. And obviously, there's I really like Gilbert Burns to win this fight here, Pete.
Yeah.
To me, it's from a DFS aspect, it becomes more of a he's 9,600 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. So if I'm looking at DK and I'm thinking if he's going to be optimal with that price tag, it's got to either be it's a quick finish where he gets a knockdown or takedown, and he gets a 25 bonus points there, or he's just racking up grappling because look, he's a better grappler. I have a lot of questions about where Jorge Masvidal is this point in his career, kind of. I mean, look, if Jorge goes out there and pulls it off tomorrow night, is he getting a title shot? Wouldn't be shocked. Would not be shocked at all. But I just feel like this is Gilbert Burns' fight to lose.
Yeah, so I really like Gilbert Burns, right? It comes down to salary, and 9,600 is expensive. When has Gilbert Burns paid off a 9,600 price tag? Well, let's kind of dive in. Against Neil Magny, who I loved him against Neil Magny. He got a quick finish in round one and only scored 102. In a 5-round decision against Tyron Woodley, where he put together a very strong performance, he only scored 102. Damian Maia, first round KO, 105. The only time he's really gotten over 105 points was 120 against Mike Davis, who Mike Davis took that on short notice and got a second round submission. 106 against Dan Moret, 111 against Jason Sago, second round. So for me, I do think that under 110 is probably what's going to happen. So when I can kind of forecast less than 110 points, I'm going to be underweight to the field. Even if I like the fighter, even if I think the fighter's going to go out there and be dominant if he chooses to be. He has takedown city potential for sure. We've seen Jorge Masvidal, get taken down, but on short notice, he kind of stifled the takedown attempts of Kamaru Usman. But Colby Covington took him and made him the mayor of Takedown City. So I think that Gilbert Burns possesses the power to test the chin of Jorge. I think that he possesses the jiu-jitsu to get a finish, unlike a lot of these other wrestlers that have faced Jorge Masvidal. And then he is a good wrestler in his own right. So I don't I I'll tell you what though, anytime I can get a superstar in the 6K range, I'm just going to get to him. I just am. They find ways to win sometimes. If you dive into Jorge Masvidal's record, it's it's very impressive, but not of late. Like, 3 straight losses, 2 to Usman, 1 to Covington, TKO over Nate Diaz. Okay, Nate Diaz is a showman, not necessarily top tier talent. The quick finish over Ben Askren. Okay, the comeback against Darren Till. Darren Till has extremely fizzled out within mixed martial arts, and then the 2 decisions to Stephen Thompson and Damian Maia. So I think that there's a pretty easy path to Gilbert Burns to bank 2 rounds and win a decision here. But I'm with you as far as like salary is concerned. I just think like, the one dark cloud that kind of follows Gilbert Burns over his head is the fact that he was knocked out against 155 or in Dan Hooker. So like we remember Dan Hooker hitting him with a left hook and planting Gilbert Burns on his back. And now we have this image of Gilbert Burns being super chinny. And I have that same type of image of Gilbert Burns, but go back and watch the Hamza Chimaev fight. My boy, they slugged it out. And yeah, Gilbert Burns got hurt throughout that contest numerous times, but he wasn't out, and he was able to fight back, and his heart, shined through. And it just proved a lot that him at welterweight is a completely different animal than how he used to be at lightweight. I think that he can take, shots better than he used to. Yes, he was finished by Kamaru Usman, but Usman during his reign in his best is one of the best, welterweights of all time. So I have to tell you that I think Gilbert Burns gets this done pretty easily. But I'm with you as far as like, ceiling. I don't think that Gilbert Burns is my top option for ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there, if you look at his history in terms of what he scores, it's generally he's just not a slate breaker. But like, this is one of those things where I want to look at ownership of how it plays out over the next 24 hours. And, does it get to a point where I say, okay, maybe I want to get a little bit more than the field just because I might be able to find a little bit of a leverage spot, especially if this becomes a heavy grappling base from Gilbert Burns. I would imagine you're going to see some grappling here for Gilbert Burns. But I mean, look, when it comes to Jorge Masvidal had a great 2019.
Yeah.
It's 2023. I mean, look, I don't mind. And like there was a comment here in the chat from, Sam, where he said, he goes, I'll take the Masvidal punt play. I understand that idea, but I will tell you this. If I'm looking for a punt play on this card, I'm looking at our next fight. I'm looking at Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio, or Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's a +2, or later on, we'll talk about that fight that weeks ago, another fight before that. But that is the pump play I'm looking to more than getting to Jorge Masvidal. Our next fight is a matchup that, from a fight aspect, Pete, I absolutely love. I love this matchup of Rob Font and Adrian Yanez. I mean, if you're a fight fan, I don't know how you don't look at this matchup and go, damn, man, this has a recipe to just be a great fight. Just a great fight. I don't know if I really don't love it from a DFS perspective here. Adrian Yanez, a -180 betting favorite, +152 for Rob Font. Yanez 8,500 on DK, 7,700 for Rob Font, and then 16 and 14 on FanDuel, which kind of becomes interesting. But this is where I really don't love this fight in terms of a DFS fight. Is I don't expect there to be takedowns. I'm expecting this to be a straight up boxing matchup. Like someone asked in our Discord channel a little earlier today, and by the way, totally free to join our Discord channel. Also, we'll put up that DraftKings contest here later on today. We'll have it here in the notes here, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on the podcasting platforms. And comparing this to Giga Chikadze and Calvin Kattar, I get why someone would offer that comparison. It's just I just don't expect we're going to see takedowns from either one of these guys, and I don't expect to see a heavy leg kicking game from either one of them.
All right, so I will say that this fight is a banger. I can't wait to watch this fight. It's a battle of 2 technicians, and we have Adrian Yanez with arguably the best hands within the division going up against Rob Font. I'm a big Rob Font guy, always rooted for him in New England, and friendly with Rob Font. So I want Rob Font to do well. And I think that He's been looking phenomenal. Rob has really looked phenomenal. It's just another case of the 5 round fight, right? Like it's so tough to be perfect for 25 minutes. And even though he's out voluming and kind of outworking his opponents, the bigger and more damaging shots against Jose Aldo and Marlon Vera were landed by Jose Aldo and Marlon Vera. So they ended up, despite the out volume, they made up for that lack of volume with power and damage. And we've seen Rob take a ton of damage these past 50 minutes. And Marlon Vera dropped him numerous times. Jose Aldo hurt him numerous times. And I really thought that the Jose Aldo performance was going to be the performance that was going to catapult Rob's career. He's always been on an upward trajectory. And I thought that the name value of Jose Aldo was what was going to be that nice, notable win. He looked good in it. It's just he looks great in it, and then he starts getting hit with some big shots, and the damage is starting to accumulate. And at this point in time, I don't know, is Adrian Yanez the straw that broke the camel's back? Because Yanez's speed can catch you off guard. He can counter you. He can hit you with some quick combinations. I think these guys are going to go tit for tat on the feet. And I can also poke holes at Adrian Yanez's career a little bit and say, well, he has not fought the top level competition like Rob has, and that's fair to say. Tony Kelly, Davey Grant, Randy Costa, Gustavo Lopez, and Victor Rodriguez are nowhere near what Rob has just dealt with. Marlon Vera, Jose Aldo, Cody Garbrandt, Marley Moraes, Ricky Simone, Sergio Pettis. But this is this necessary step up for Adrian Yanez to kind of break into the rankings and the top 10 and even more so. So is Yanez ready for it? I think he is to a point. But if you go back and you watch the Randy Costa fight, I know Randy Costa pretty well, and Randy really excels at putting his hands behind his hands into his kicks and blending all of his strikes together. He's not a prolific boxer, and we saw Randy Costa going out there out jabbing and just hitting Yanez with almost every straight punch imaginable. And Yanez, despite his boxing proficiency, was just getting lit up. I see Rob Font, and I see his jab, and I see how good he is with his boxing and how technical he is. And he has a phenomenal jab. I mean, just ask Marlon Moraes. He sat Marlon Moraes down with a jab and followed it up with some ground and pound. I think that Rob has all the skills to pull off this upset here at 7,700. I'm going to be siding with Rob Font. Now, I will slightly disagree with you, and I actually think that the time off, and if I'm a part of Rob's camp, we are incorporating takedowns because we have seen Rob go to the takedown well at an impressive rate. 1 of 2 against Marlon Vera, 1 of 5 against Jose Aldo, 2 of 3 against Cody Garbrandt, 2 of 4 against Sergio Pettis, 1 of 1 against Ricky Simone. He can do that, and he's actually pulled off submissions in the past against Douglas Silva de Andrade. And I don't think we've really seen too many people test Yanez within that department. So I'm just saying that I think that Rob's going to look to solidify some rounds with a takedown attempt, whether it's successful or not. Yanez has only defended 5 takedowns in his 5 fights in the UFC. 3 of them were against Victor Rodriguez, 1 against Gustavo Lopez, and once against Davey Grant. So strap up those wrestling shoes, Rob Font, and jab them up, put some combinations together, and then start to blend it. And I really think that's where like Tyson Chartier and all the guys in New England Cartel, I think that's what they're going to do. Might calf kick him a little bit in route to making this just a complete mixed martial artist fight. So I'm going to be siding with Rob Font here at 7,700. And for me, though, I think that one way or another, we're going to need this fight. I think the contrarian approach is what Jason's saying is if it's just a 15-minute decision, you could do without it. And that's kind of been the head scratcher for me this week where I keep landing on this fight, and it's hard for me not to include it.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at right now the ownership projection on this fight, the ownership of Rob Font does stick out to me. I'm saying, man, I like Rob as an underdog here. I mean, I love the fact that you brought up the Randy Costa fight because go back and watch that first round. Randy Costa had a lot of success.
Oh,
I remember watching that fight going, whoa. Because I remember I had a ton of Adrian Yanez that night. I had a ton of Adrian Yanez, and I was like, oh, crap. This is not good. And I mean, look, we both know Randy Costa is, and we know what Randy does. And of course, it faded off after that first round, and Yanez took advantage of it. But it is a kind of that classic matchmaking by the UFC of you got the young up-and-coming guy, and this is that first real step up in competition of, are you a top 10 fighter in this, UFC division or not? And, it's from a GPP aspect, it just kind of concerns me of whether or not, it does get to 100 plus points, but you bring up the great point of, if you're Tyson Chartier and that entire, New England Cartel team, the thought process is, hey, can you mix it in? And the final thing I'll mention is, yes, he lost to Cheeto Vera. He looked good against Cheeto Vera. It's just it was like the final minute every round was when he got annihilated. And I think people kind of forget of, he had a lot of great moments in that matchup. So, but I will say this in terms of like from a fight aspect, man, I love this matchup. Let's move over. Next up, we got Kelvin Holland taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. Kelvin Holland in minus 260. Betting favorite, plus 210 for Santiago Ponzinibbio, 9,300 for Holland on DK, 6,900 for Santiago, and then is 1912 on FanDuel. By the way, why does Kelvin Holland get into battles on fight week with guys he's not fighting?
I don't know. It seems like, he's the common denominator, right? He's an outspoken man, so perhaps he just doesn't let anything slide. Or maybe he's just a troublemaker. I do like Kevin Holland, though, a lot, so I'm not complaining.
Well, there is a reason they've called him Big Mouth.
Yeah, I mean,
but
fitting the nickname.
But I mentioned this. Like, if you tell me you want me to take one of these guys in the 6,000 range, I'd rather go to Santiago Ponzinibbio than go to Jorge Masvidal. Santiago Ponzinibbio, I mean, look, you remember there was a time where, man, he put together this great run. To me, it is a little concerning when Santiago comes out and says, hey, Kevin slid into my Instagram DMs and was asking for this fight to be at 185 as opposed to 170. That's a little concerning when I hear that.
Yeah, well, I think Kevin just wanted to enjoy the Miami food down there. That's what he was saying, and he's like, dude, I can make welterweight. Let's screw cut and wait. So it's like, don't agree to 170 then, bro. But yeah, I think Santiago Ponzinibbio is going to be extremely popular at 6,000. He's going to be a 6,000 punt. People hope that he can just do enough in a loss, not get finished, and has the volume and actually wrestling advantage in this situation against Kevin Holland. So why can't he win a decision? Why can't he possibly knock out Kevin Holland? I mean, this is a guy that a lot of people were picking to, fight for the title and possibly dethrone Kamaru Usman years ago. So, I mean, I've always liked Santiago Ponzinibbio, but he's so hittable. He's very hittable. And, he picks up a ton of knockdowns, but he takes a ton of damage as well. Like, if you go back and you watch that Miguel Baeza fight, for some reason that fight sticks out to me like crazy. And it was a war. And Baeza was a highly touted prospect that really fizzled out, but that was a crazy, crazy fight. I really like Kevin Holland here in this matchup at 9,300. I got to tell you, the one worry whenever you roster Kevin Holland is if his opponent's just going to decide to wrestle. Because if his opponents decide to wrestle, then he's going to get taken down to Takedown City. I know that he's a good submission fighter where he is able to threaten you with submissions and, punish you on the feet and then wrap up your neck. But, as far as like wrestling defense, we've seen him lose some fights to people. It was just like, man, I thought you were going to take this next step. Derek Brunson, Marvin Vettori, even like Alex Oliveira had his back and had him in a horrible position. We saw what happened against Hamza Shemaev. Like, that wasn't even a fight. So then when he was given the Stephen Thompson fight, it's like, okay, now he doesn't have to worry about getting taken down. Little did he realize that he's in there against the trickiest striker known to man, who will angle off, hit you with side kicks, hook kicks, straight punches, and, just beat the hell out of you. And even Jorge Masvidal struggled and was picked apart against Stephen Thompson too. So Stephen Thompson's just one of those rare fighters where he just gives everybody a problem. But yeah, Kevin Holland at 9,300. The reason I like him so much here is just how big he is in comparison to Santiago Ponzinibbio. He has an 8-inch reach advantage over Santiago Ponzinibbio. He stands at 6'3". Ponzinibbio stands at 6 foot. 81-inch reach, 73-inch for Ponzinibbio. I think the straight punches are going to be there against the hittable Ponzinibbio. He needs to defend the takedown if Pons looks to, incorporate the wrestling. The one red flag I had about Ponzinibbio is how Alex Morona on single-digit days took the fight against Pons and was beating the hell out of him for 2 rounds. And then in the third round, Ponzinibbio kind of, just found his stride and landed a knockout in the third round. But I didn't think it was a good look for Morona to step up on super short notice and have all that success for 2 rounds. He's not a prolific power puncher, but I just see Kevin Holland. If he lands those shots, he finishes you. So Kevin Holland might be, kind of lost in the 9,000 shuffle this week, but I might be a little bit more aggressive on him, man. I think that this is a very nice fight, and we've seen Santiago Ponzinibbio, be so damn tough that maybe we get more than one knockdown. So I guess I don't want to plant my flag on this. I'll decide at the end of the show, but I'm pretty aggressive over Kevin Holland this week. I hope that he doesn't get taken down to Takedown City.
I mean, look, we talk about that all the time of, utilizing ownership projections and, looking at those 9,000 fighters. Like, for example, when I look at my sheet, I have all the 9,000 fighters highlighted, and it's about, okay, who is going to be that fighter that just people are not going to be getting to. And Kevin Holland will likely be one of those guys. I think another fighter that probably is not, people are not going to get to in that 9,000 range this week is Loopy Godinez. So we'll talk about her later on in the show. But, but just in terms of, like, if I'm looking at, putting a fighter on my lineup in this low range, I just think you've got a better possibility with Ponzinibbio, scoring points as opposed to, say, Jorge Masvidal scoring points. Next up, we got the opening matchup of the pay-per-view. We got the 18-year-old kid, Raul Rosas Jr., taking on Christian Rodriguez. Rodriguez did miss weight earlier today, missed weight by 1 pound, weighing in at 137 pounds. He initially weighed in at 137.5, got the additional time, still was unable to make weight. He's been fined 20% of his purse, so this fight will go forward here. He is a plus 210 betting underdog. Raul Rosas Jr. minus 260 betting favorite. Over on DraftKings, Rosas is 9,100. 7,100 for Rodriguez and 18 and 13 respectively. Obviously we all know the hype that is around Raul. There's no doubt about it. But Pete, if I was going to offer any concern to have about Raul at this point in his career, to me it just comes down to is what happens if his chin gets checked.
Yeah, I mean it's going to happen, and you don't know how a fighter's going to respond. They could panic. They could, just never be themselves in there. They could have that, that bullied mentality where they're just kind of shell up and they don't go back to the well of the takedowns and they're just trying to survive. And instead of going out there and, looking to incorporate their takedowns, like if he runs into a knee, well, does he really go back to the takedowns as aggressive as he was? I think that, we could have, a huge upset here with Christian Rodriguez spoiling Raul Rosas Jr. Now, I have concerns on both sides, but I will say this and take this for what it is. Me personally, instead of playing Santiago Ponzinibbio, who is 6,900, I would rather find the $200 in salary and pay up for Christian Rodriguez at 7,100. Personally, that's my punt play. If I was going to punt something, I'd rather find that $200. That Ponzinibbio is going to have a ton of ownership. That the public perception is backing Raul Rosas. I will tell you that we've heard a lot about Christian Rodriguez over the years, where Duke Rufus and the entire team, Paul Felder and Anthony Showtime, the whole Duke Rufus team, and even Henry Cejudo too, kind of Christian Rodriguez dabbling between camps. I've heard great things about Christian Rodriguez, and Cejudo said that this is a great matchup for Christian Rodriguez. C-Rod has phenomenal jiu-jitsu, and that was on display in his short notice debut against Jonathan Pierce, where he damn near submitted Jonathan Pierce with numerous guillotines. He attempted 3 submission attempts. I still think that is wrong. I think he attempted way more than that. And Jonathan Pierce was gurgling at times, and it looked like he was going to get submitted by this all of a sudden newcomer. He landed 2 of 2 takedowns against Jonathan Pierce as well. I think the striking is clearly in favor of Christian Rodriguez. The hands are way better for Christian Rodriguez than Raul Rosas Jr. The thing that Raul Rosas does is he just tries to steamroll all of his opponents, and his opponents are too busy defending everything that Raul Rosas throws at them, whether it's submission attempts or little ground and pound or takedowns, that they don't time runs out and they don't have time to end up being offensive at all. And next thing you know, they either get submitted or they just lost a 15-minute decision because Raul Rosas Jr. never let them get out of that defensive mindset. Christian Rodriguez can scramble really well. He can punch really well, and he has good submissions. But I don't want to see him pulling guillotine against this jiu-jitsu phenom, Raul Rosas Jr. What I think is going to happen is they're both going to it's going to be a pretty even contest where Rosas is getting takedowns and having more control. Rodriguez is getting back to his feet. He's hitting some damaging shots, and then it's going to come down to that decision. And it's like, what are we valuing here? Are we valuing the position and control? Or are we valuing some of the damage? And I think it's going to be a controversial decision. I still think that Raul Rosas Jr. is going to do it. And the reason why I say that is that Josh Weems, on super short notice, took Christian Rodriguez down 2 of 3 times. Yeah, he popped back up. But Josh Weems is, in my opinion, not UFC caliber at all. And, we saw him get finished relatively quickly on Dana White's Contender Series. And yes, he did get finished in the first round via anaconda choke. But it was like, in that first round, what happened? And I think that Raul Rosas is 10 times the grappler that Josh Weems is. So it's just tricky. I'm going to get to Christian Rodriguez as one of my most exposed underdogs on the slate. But I just have this gut feeling that Raul Rosas still does enough in the judge's eyes to get the decision.
Look, I mean, this, that there's certain fighters that you just don't want to play jiu-jitsu with. And when you talk to fighters who train in Las Vegas, that's the one thing they'll say about Raul. They say, you don't want to play jiu-jitsu with this kid. He's a different level. And so if you're Christian Rodriguez, you got to keep it on the feed. Really, the question I think becomes is, does it only take one takedown if Raul does get to the ground? By the way, I'll say this over on Prize Picks, his takedown prop is 3.
Yeah, I'm going more on that because I think that Rodriguez is he's going to pop back up. And the gas tank of both fighters is going to be, put to the test. I think that Rodriguez is going to give him a hell of a fight. And I can really see him pulling off this upset. For betting, I'm going to be betting Christian Rodriguez. And for DFS, I'm going to be aggressive on the underdog. But I think that we're going to see one hell of a back and forth fight.
Of course, appreciate everyone tuning in here for the Fight HQ UFC 287 preview. If you haven't watched this on YouTube, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Really do appreciate that. We're trying to get over 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube so we can monetize this channel. Also, if you're listening to us on the podcasting platforms, if you can subscribe, rate, and review, we appreciate that as well. Next up, we got Kelvin Gastelum taking on Chris Curtis. Kelvin Gastelum, a minus 125 betting favorite, plus 105 for Chris Curtis. This is the 8,000 fight on DK, with Kelvin Gastelum being the 8,200 fighter over on FanDuel. $16 and $15 for FanDuel. People, when I was kind of taking a dive into this, of really looking into the Kelvin Gastelum side of the equation, one of the things that really stuck out to me is, like, man, this guy has fought the who's who of this division. But the one thing that does stick out to you is there's not really that notable win of Kelvin Gastelum right now. When you look at, in terms of fighters still in the UFC, Ian Heinisch, I believe, is the only one that's on his record at this point. But this is another one, and I think it's kind of like the Yanez and Font fight for me, Pete. Is I look at how this fight plays out. The fight probably plays out on the feed. I mean, we've always got who was the guy we were talking about going Gaethje. At what point is Gaethje going to become this wrestler? And I believe your line was a couple weeks ago was, Jason, he's not a wrestler. He's not going to wrestle, even though we did see him finally get a takedown. But, you think of Kelvin Gastelum, you think, he can take it down. But Chris Curtis, since coming into the UFC, has been a guy who has been able to take down. It used to be a flaw of his. It used to be something that, people would be able to take him down easy. It's just for me of, I look at this fight just saying, I think it's a 15-minute stand-up war.
Yeah, okay, so I'm with you, and I still don't think obviously the one takedown, like Gaethje got it, that was good, that was smart, but it's still not what he wants to do clearly. And Kelvin Gastelum, at least is trying to get takedowns, and I will tell you that I'm not too sure. I'm very surprised with what I'm seeing for ownership, and I think the public perception, everybody's going Chris Curtis from what I'm seeing, and it's I'm not buying Chris Curtis right here. I'm not. And I'm a big Chris Curtis guy. Been a big fan of his since he fought in the same regional promotion as I did. And then beyond that, he's fought in major promotions, and he's one of the most accredited regional fighters and who finally caught his break, and he's in the UFC, and now he's everybody's darling, especially if he's going up against somebody who's chinny. You wanna play Chris Curtis, especially via TKO KO, because he has that phenomenal power about him, and he's very slick with his hands. The Joaquin Buckley fight, right? Like, we knew Joaquin Buckley had a bad chin, has a bad chin. Um, like, he's been hit plenty of times and rocked and hurt plenty of times, and it was just a matter of if Chris Curtis would actually throw. He's too tentative sometimes, and he's kind of like, you know, he's downloading the data in front of him a lot of times, and he's trying to pick up on people's patterns, and he's trying to find that beautiful one-shot counter, and a lot of times minutes are ticking off the clock. And what I will tell you is that if you go back and you look at Kelvin Gastelum, his UFC career hasn't been knocked out. So, like, I gotta tell you, I think that, this is a hell of a matchup for Chris Curtis. Yes, Kelvin's taken a tremendous amount of damage throughout his career, but Kelvin is fighting the best fighters within the division. Past two fights, Jared Cannonier, Robert Whitaker. He went 5 rounds with Jared Cannonier. You know what I mean? Derek Brunson couldn't do that. I think that Kelvin Gastelum, now being a part of Fight Ready, having 3 fight camps with Fight Ready, and finally now getting to actually go in there with a good team behind him and having him super prepared, and, from staph infection to the mouth injury to now getting in there, I think we might see Kelvin Gastelum 2.0, or at this point, is it, 3.0? I don't really know, but he went 0 of 8 against Jared Cannonier in the takedown department, 1 of 5 against Robert Whitaker, 6 of 14 against Ian Heinisch. 6 of 14. I really like that number. If he scores 95 points at 8,200, he's going to be a part of the optimal lineup. So yeah, I'm really bullish on Kelvin Gastelum. I hope that, kind of how I was talking about earlier in the card of you know Yanez and Font, is Chris Curtis the straw that broke the camel's back, and despite Gastelum not being finished, it just takes one shot. He's been dropped and he's been rocked numerous times, but is Chris Curtis finally the guy to do it? Um, I don't think so. So I'm going to be going pretty heavily on Kelvin Gastelum, but I understand your precautions about this fight not paying off that salary.
Yeah, that's just my concern. I talk about this every week. It's that ceiling upside. And when you have a fight where if there is not takedowns in this one, I just look at that and go, man, is this a 80-point ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, it could, but like, see, the thing is like, I just want to win, right? Like, I'd like that 80-point fighter. 80, no, I need like mid 80s,
Correct. Yeah.
but like mid 80s is a little bit better than 40s who got screwed on the decision. You know what I'm saying? So like, we just got to have some good bounces. But I understand there's 100-point ceiling probably not attached to this fight.
Look, I could see where I think this would be more of if I'm hand building a cash game lineup, that I could see myself getting to this fight a little bit more just from a cash build as opposed to a GPP build. Let's move over. Next one, we got a female matchup. Luana Pinheiro taking on Michelle Waterson-Gomez. Michelle Waterson-Gomez is a plus 150 betting underdog. Just signed a new 8-fight deal with the UFC. I'm not sure why you're signing 8-fight deals, but you're signing 8-fight deals. Yep. Luna is a minus 175 betting favorite. She's $8,600 on DK, $16 on FanDuel, and Michelle is $7,600 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. And this is, I mean, Pete, I think this is another example of the UFC kind of, looking at a fighter who's, kind of coming up, and you're throwing her against a fighter who's been around this division for some time.
Yeah, it's like, are you ready for the next step up or not? And I'm kind of really confused about this catapult upward throughout the division from Randa Marcos, Sam Hughes to now Michelle Waterson. It's like, what? I don't know. I just think it could be the lack of depth or the lack of name value attached. But within women's MMA, a couple wins, next thing you know, you're fighting ranked opponents, and I think that, Michelle Waterson fighting Amanda Lemos, Marina Rodriguez, Angela Hill, Carla Esparza, Ioane, and Jacek, like that's crazy. Those fighters that I just listed off, that's crazy. To now be fighting Luana Pinheiro, who doesn't have the name value that those other fighters have. She has skills, of course. She has good judo, so she has nice head and arm throws. So does Michelle Waterson. So I'm excited to see who's going to have the better hips in this situation and who's going to get thrown or who's not. I would probably say that Michelle might surprise Luana a little bit. Um, but I do think that as far as raw judo skills, that Luana is going to be more inclined to get the fight to the ground because of her grappling skills. She went 5 of 6, and that was in round one. 5 of 6 against Rana Marcos before the DQ happened. 2 of 3 in a 3-round decision against Sam Hughes. But if Sam Hughes can kind of stifle that, I think that, Michelle Waterson can as well. Michelle, the karate hottie, she looks to be in phenomenal shape. She looks like Holly Holm type of shape. Like she
Yeah.
looks shredded to the bone. So I think that she's taking this fight completely serious. I like the small glove sparring I'm seeing on social media. I like everything I'm seeing. And I like how she has the distance striking to win a fight like this. Because if this isn't in a phone booth, if this isn't in boxing range, who has the advantage? And it's the karate hottie. It's Michelle Waterson with the side kicks and the round kicks and front kicks and good movement. And that's Mike Winklejohn's specialty, is really stressing those skills, similar to how he has done that with Holly Holm. So I'm telling you, I'm picking Michelle Waterson here at 7,600. I think it's tough for me to bank on a finisher within women's MMA of Luana Pinheiro to go out there and finish Michelle Waterson, because outside of Amanda Lemos finishing Waterson in round two and Rose Namajunas finishing her in round two, I don't expect Michelle to give up her back or get put in a bad position, but you never know. It could happen. Outside of that, I just don't see how it happens, and she's been training so diligently on her ground game as well, and she likes to incorporate takedowns, and she went 1 of 18. I know that's a terrible ratio, but 1 of 18 against Angela Hill. So if things get bad, she can look to do that, but
Mhm.
I think Michelle's going to want to stick and move on the feet en route to a 15-minute decision. So 7,600 Michelle Waterson, she's going to be underdog play for me, and Luana Pinheiro, it might be, lost in the shuffle there at 8,600 for me. Could be a leverage play.
Well, I mean, it does look like some ownership is going her way in terms of that way. Let's
Oh,
move.
yeah.
Let's move over. Next up, we got Joe Pyfer taking on Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert, a plus 170 betting underdog, minus 200 for Pyfer. Pyfer, a 700 DK, $17 on FanDuel. GM3 is 7,500 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. GM3, it seems like more times than not, Pete, he shines in these scenarios. I mean, clearly for GM3, it is about, utilizing the grappling in this one. But, when we're talking about people that I want to put in my underdog pool, GM3 is there because of the finishing upside.
Yeah, 100%. And, Ian Heinisch was a guy that we took advantage, and, he hopped on, Meerschaert really early and got him out of there in round one. Hamza Shemaev, same thing, got him out of there really early in round one. But if you can't hop on Gerald Meerschaert and get him out of there early, he just doesn't go away, and he's annoying. He sits there and he picks at you with good combinations and good left kicks to the body. And if I told you he was going to beat Makhmud Muradov, you'd probably think that I was crazy. If I told you he was going to beat Bruno Silva, you'd probably think that I was crazy. It's crazy what this guy can do. Not when it hits the mat. When it hits the mat, he's just absolutely phenomenal. But he's like, I don't know what the UFC does. They just like, he's the test. He will
Mhm.
ultimately test every prospect, and it's like, all right, let's see if this kid's legit. Give him the Meerschaert, and then it's like if Meerschaert passes, it's like, well, the kid wasn't that good. Or even if he is good, Meerschaert's just that stepping stone. And are you ready or not? The fact that he beat Bruno Silva really blows my mind. Bruno looked horrible in that fight, but Meerschaert now working a lot at Killcliff FC with that very very talented room down there in Florida. I think that we could be seeing like a just staple within the division, because you go back and you watch Joe Pyfer's regional tapes. if people were able to incorporate takedowns, they had success. Dustin Stoltzfus on the Contender Series had success by doing so en route to a gruesome arm injury. I think that Meerschaert, despite his grappling skills, isn't the best wrestler, which kind of is weird. Um, but he really is just opportunistic with grabbing submissions and everything. I just, for some reason, can't get out of my head. Like Joe Pyfer, it took him 4 minutes to get rid of Amedovski. I thought he was going to go out there and get 30 seconds, Amedovski. You know what I mean? And he threw 45. He only landed 14. That type of accuracy, one shot can knock out Gerald Meerschaert, but I'm going to pick the better minute winner here in Gerald Meerschaert, despite Pyfer being a part of Daniel Gracie's team. And Renzo Gracie Philly is a team that, man, they steal everybody's money because they just are constantly counted out and they shine all the time. So I'm circling this fight. I'm going to get to both sides, but how can I not pick Gerald Meerschaert here? Pyfer hasn't truly been tested the way that Meerschaert has. So 7,500, I'm going to go Meerschaert.
Speaking of that team, watch out for Patrick Brady in the PFL tonight.
Interesting. And you know what's crazy is we have PFL, so I can make some money tonight. I love it.
I'll say this for people who are not in that Discord channel. You missed out. Pete was throwing some dimes last Saturday night.
Sure
making some. All I know is I'm looking at my phone. I just see the notification of it, just a check mark.
Oh yeah, bro. You already know. If I'm shouting out parlays and I'm shouting out this and that, and then when they come through, we get that green check mark. We get that green check mark.
And hell, if you were on those underdogs on Bellator last Friday night, I was talking about my show earlier in the week. Is man, I would say if you took the 3 underdogs at one on the prelims was like.
It was insane.
It was like 20 to 1 or something like that. It was a crazy number, but yeah, that's why you gotta be at the Discord channel, because Pete always dropping those dimes of what to do there. And I think a quick note, and I want to say you mentioned this in the Discord of, for the most part, PFL, you don't like to parlay, you just like to do straight bets.
Yeah, the issue with the parlaying is you're parlaying 3 to 4 to 5. Same with Bellator. Huge favorites. And then when you do so, you're getting like plus 110. I'd rather get a little bit more aggressive and try to pick method of victory, or go fight by fight. And like, if you have, just like in your gut, an idea of what's going to happen, I would just rather do that. And then get, sprinkle in some underdogs rather than just like having so many chalky plays all put together. And listen, PFL, I mean, Bellator was worse last weekend with how many of those, crazy favorites just, dropped the ball. That was crazy. How Vegas won so much money last week from everybody just doing that same exact thing. Yeah. Oh, let's minus 1,000 favorite. Throw them in. And it's like, it was a disaster for anybody doing the chalky parlays.
Oh, no doubt about it. Let's move over. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup, a fight that came together this week when Chris Barnett pulled out. You got Karl Williams taking on Chase Sherman. Karl Williams a minus 420 betting favorite, plus 325 for Chase Sherman. Of course, Chase Sherman's DK salary is already out there. He was $8,800 on FanDuel. He's $9 because of the fight change. Karl Williams $9,500, 22 on FanDuel. And I mean, look, Pete, you were all over Karl Williams a couple weeks ago. If I was going to offer any question marks on his side, quick turnaround between two fights, stylistic for Chase Sherman, this is just an awful matchup for him.
Yeah, it's a horrible matchup. You go from one end of the spectrum to the other side. And I will say that the only negative thing I can say about Karl Williams' performance against Łukasz Brzeski was just him putting his hands on his knees and gasping and looking like an exhausted player in basketball. That was not good body language at all, but he was lucky that his opponent did the same damn thing. They were like, all right, let's take a 30-second breather. He picked up a knockdown. He picked up 8 takedowns. He went 8 of 13, had over 10 minutes of control time. He was my boy. And he absolutely made me look smart that week. And I like him here. He scored 129 points against Łukasz Brzeski. He's going up against Chase Sherman, who is a part of a good camp in Kill Cliff FC. You would think that his wrestling's getting better, but I just think there's sometimes like it's so tough for some people to develop when they haven't shown signs of developing. And that's kind of what I look at Chase Sherman. It's like he would have learned by now. He could defend some, but like even in solid matchups, I just don't think like he's a good fighter. The only time he's defended a good amount of takedowns was against Parker Porter, where he defended 7. Parker's more of a jiu-jitsu guy, not a wrestling ace like Carl Williams is. So for me, it's a Carl Williams play. It's a hell no to Chase Sherman at 8,800. I'm not playing that. But Carl Williams, I was really hoping that his salary wasn't 9,500 because like I want to play him. But this is kind of like that tough spot where it's like maybe Chase is probably not going to be as good as Lukasz Brzeski was at getting back to his feet. So I think that this could be a lot more control time, a lot less takedowns. He could probably hit the 5 takedown mark. Um, I hope that Williams can pick up a finish here in round 1 and round 2 with ground and pound. Totally possible. Chase Sherman just is a complete fish out of water when it hits the mat. So give me Carl Williams. Give me no Chase Sherman at 8,800. If you want to be different, by all means, go ahead. Good luck. But yeah, I'm going to say Carl Williams picks this one up.
Look, you know I love to play 20 max contests. I'll put Chase Sherman in one lineup.
I'm surprised one.
I mean, look, my expectation is this. He just gets taken down, he gets stopped. But I'm like, you know what? Let me just have one lineup that's got him in there. Because, look, if Chase Sherman goes out there, and let's just say he knocks him out in the first round,
yeah,
that's your key to being optimal right there. I mean, how many times every week we see there's a fight where, for whatever reason, we make that thought of, I'm just not getting there. I'm not getting there.
Yep.
Holly Holm a couple weeks ago on the San Antonio card. I didn't get there.
I couldn't believe that.
We were clearly wrong in that. But, you know, it's just one of those things of like, look, if I'm playing single entry, you know, if I'm throwing some bullets in some various contests, am I putting Chase Sherman in there? Hell to the no. Why would you? Why would you? Like, if I sat there and said, hey, Pete, I'm going in this X dollar single entry and I'm starting my life with Chase Sherman, you might go, hey, bro, I'm the one not getting sleep over here. You need to tell me something?
Yeah, exactly. What's going on over there, Jason? Why are you going that route? I think
like,
the
Jason,
only performance.
Jason you'd be like, Jason, you drinking a little too much tonight? Like you little hammer making lineups
over there. Yeah, what's in that Diet Coke? I will say that the one performance that sticks out on the page, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's possible, is Chase Sherman's 3rd round TKO victory over Jared Vanderaa. You know, Vandeera's not really good, but you don't have to be good if you're tired. And if Carl Williams is so exhausted, he can get TKO'd that way. He did pick up a knockdown against Jared Vanderaa. He did score 109 in that fight. So, shoulder shrug. I'm still saying Carl Williams.
Next up, we got Loopy Godinez taking on Cynthia Calvillo. Loopy Godinez, a minus 270 betting favorite, plus 220 for Calvillo, 9,200 for Godinez on DK, $21 on FanDuel for Calvillo, $7,000 on DK, $11 on FanDuel. And this is, I think, one of those situations where you talk about game theory, Pete, and you look at that ownership of Loopy Godinez and saying, okay, overall, Cynthia Calvillo has been able to stop takedowns, but she really hasn't gone up against someone that really has pressured those takedowns the way Loopy could. And we all know you're we all know you're the captain of Syndicate MMA over there, or not?
Yeah, definitely not. So what I will say is that Loopy Godinez needs to go back out there to doing what brought her to the dance. You know, she only attempted 3 takedowns against Angela Hill. It's because Angela Hill was hitting her with straight punches and all combinations galore. And, you know, your ego was put into check. And it's like, you know, why try to prove you're a better striker than Angela Hill? You're not. So she went 8 of 8 in the takedown department against Ariana Conor-Olosi, 5 of 12 against Loma Lukbumi, 2 of 15 against Luana Carolina. She lost that one. Couldn't really get it going. But I will say that we have a fighter in Cynthia Calvillo who hasn't looked good in a very long time. She lost at the split decision to Nina Ansaroff. She went 3 of 6 in the takedown department. I'm interested to see who's going to be the better grappler here. I feel like Loopy Godinez is the better wrestler of the two, and I think that Cynthia Calvillo might have the better jiu-jitsu of the two. So we need Loopy to take her down, if she does take her down, and avoid the scrambles and avoid getting her back taken. I will never exclude a women's mixed martial artist in an underdog situation from my player pool. Despite how poor she's looked at 7,000, she has fought the better competition And this is a fighter that a lot of people thought, including myself, that she'd be within the top 10, top 5 for a decent amount of time. And, her career really stalled out. So I'm going to be still going with Loopy Godinez here. I think that I'm just going to be siding with youth, the athleticism, the takedowns. She's just much more explosive than Cynthia Calvillo, who I think is kind of like stuck in second gear. So a fight that I'm not really prioritizing, though. I'm going to be very underweight to the field. But it's kind of hard when you see those takedown numbers of Loopy Godinez. It's just, does she go to that strategy in this particular matchup or not? I think that she does it, but she does it methodically. So I'm picking Loopy Godinez to win here. Don't like the price tag. Get to a little bit of Cynthia Calvillo.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more kind of, for me, it'll be an ownership play more than anything else,
Yeah.
of potentially getting Loopy Godinez based on what some of the other ownership of those 9,000 fighters are getting there. Next up, we got Bahamondes and Ogden. Bahamondes at minus 350 betting favorite, plus 275 for Trey. Ogden over for DraftKings. Bahamondes is 9,400. He's $22 on FanDuel. For Ogden, 6,800 on DK, $10 on FanDuel. Pete, what's your thoughts?
I don't hate the punt play of Trey Ogden because anytime we have a 6,000 fighter that has takedown upside, you can't uncheck them. You can't, because they can do so much in a loss, even that they can make it into the optimal lineup. And them at 6,000 in a loss, getting 50, 60 points because of takedowns, allows you to get 3, maybe 9,000 options, unlike a lot of other constructions. So 6,000 Trey Ogden's going to be a part of my player pool, but I'm a big Ignacio Bahamondes guy. I think that the performance against Roosevelt Roberts was career best. He defended 12 takedowns, and then he picked Roosevelt Roberts apart. Roosevelt Roberts, a guy that I thought was pretty decent, and then it's like, man, he stalled out too. But he was a good submission guy. He could mix in takedowns. He could throw heavy, heavy hands. And then he got hit with a spinning hook kick, and he was knocked out. It was one of the best knockouts we've seen. To see Ignacio Bahamondes pick up a third-round submission over Rongju, I thought that was impressive as well, and he defended 3 takedowns. So if I'm Trey Ogden, you better be shooting for your life, because on the outside, hand fighting, how he likes to hand fight and then throw his punches down the middle, I think that he's going to be getting kicked into oblivion, and I think that he's going to just get lit up like a Christmas tree in the striking department. I think he's a good striker, but I think that Bahamondes is a next-level striker. So the best way for Trey Ogden to pick up a win is to incorporate takedowns. And, he did lose to Jordan Levitt, but Jordan Levitt's a pretty good jiu-jitsu guy. But, going 1 of 9 against Daniel Zellhuber, he needs to get better takedown numbers than that against Ignacio Bahamondes if he wants to pick up this win. So I'm pretty confident Bahamondes goes out there and just puts another feather in his cap en route to a victory.
Next up, we got Nurmabecki and Garcia. Nurmabecki minus 180 betting favorite, minus 152 for Garcia. 8,900 for Nurmabecki on DK. $17 on FanDuel. Garcia, 7,300 on DK. $14 on FanDuel. Pete, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, if you're looking on paper, it looks like Steve Garcia should be an underdog to select, because his numbers, his strikes landed per minute, sits at 5.15, and Nurmabecki is 2.17. Garcia only absorbs 2.5, whereas Shayilan Nurmabecki absorbs 2.93. So the striking differential favors Steve Garcia, and I do think that that's fair. But what I will say is, despite the 6-inch reach advantage for Steve Garcia, it says that he has 100% takedown defense, which is kind of tricky, and I don't necessarily agree with it, because Steve Garcia had his back taken for large periods of time against Luis Pena. So that's why you gotta dive into these numbers. And technically, he didn't get rewarded the takedowns. But he was in a horrible compromising position with Luis Pena on his back for the whole fight. I think that Shayilan is a talented and more well-rounded mixed martial artist than Steve Garcia. He went 2 of 14 in the takedown department against Josh Kulabau, who's a damn good fighter. 4 of 8 against Sean Soriano. 3 of 6 against TJ Brown. And then that quick first-round finish against Derek Minner. So Shayilan at 8,900 is one of those guys I circled, because if you go and you look at Steve Garcia's UFC record, he lost to Luis Pena. Okay, we've already talked about that. Had to, withstand some adversity and come back against Charlie Ontiveros. Ontiveros is not a UFC talented fighter. got knocked out pretty viciously against Meerschaert, and then against the teenager and Chase Hooper, it's like, he's a one-trick pony and got completely exposed in that matchup. So level of competition, I would say size with Shayilan or Rebecca, Sean Soriano, TJ Brown, Derek Minner, and Josh Kulabauer are much better than those, 4 fighters that Steve Garcia has faced. I like Shayilan or Rebecca here. I circled them. Garcia has that power, but I think the better minute winner is Shayilan or Rebecca, and I think he's going to get a pretty decisive win.
And then, of course, our first fight tonight will be a female matchup that I don't know what FanDuel was doing. They made these salaries, but we'll very much broken over there on FanDuel. If you do play over there on FanDuel, you got Jacqueline taking on Sam. Jacqueline, a minus 270 betting favorite, plus 220 for Sam. Over on DK, 9,000 for Jacqueline. She's $11 on FanDuel. Sam, 7,200 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. So there where the broken price tag is over there. So if you're playing on FanDuel, going to be kind of really hard to get away from Jacqueline here. Pete, what's your thoughts?
I wish I could play on FanDuel because I think that it's just play Jacqueline Amarim and move on. Jacqueline Amarim is one of the brightest prospects we have from IBJJF, and she's a very, very talented submission artist. She's a prolific finisher, and usually you don't see finishers that often within women's MMA, shooting up the rankings so much. And we have a fighter in Sam Hughes who's a tough out. She's a tough out. She's out of Fortis MMA. So Saif Saud's going to strategize and come up with a good game plan. But at the end of the day, Sam Hughes has to, really go out there and implement the game plan, avoid the dangerous submission attempts of Jacqueline Amarim. And that's what I just think that the jiu-jitsu skill set is completely different. The only person who's ever attempted a submission in the UFC against Sam Hughes was Luana Pinheiro. And, I think that this girl, Jacqueline Amarim, has better jiu-jitsu than anybody Sam Hughes has faced inside the UFC. I think she's going to find a finish within round 1 or round 2. But octagon jitters are a real thing. We don't know how she's going to look outside of round 1. She hasn't really been, or she hasn't been at all. So, what happens if Sam Hughes, weathers the storm and then does what Sam Hughes, in typical Sam Hughes fashion of coming back in round 2 and round 3 and, beating the hell out of Estela Nunez, finishing Elise Reed. She can get takedowns, and she could also use her wrestling to keep it on the feet. On the feet, I do think that the advantage will reside with Sam Hughes slightly. I think that Jacqueline Amarim's just very tricky, and she's a back taker. She can throw up arm bars, just very tricky entries. Even if she gets put on her back, I think that we can see armbar from guard all day long. So I'm in love with the price tag at 9,000. I think she has the potential to get that quick win bonus. She really does, and the faster she goes and fights at the higher pace, the more likely her opponent is to make mistakes. So I kind of think that's an interesting way to go about her debut, is just go out there hot and heavy in hopes that Sam Hughes makes a mistake and capitalize it like that. So I don't hate the Sam Hughes underdog play. She's a dog. She'll fight for your dollar. It's women's MMA. I just got done saying you can't count out an underdog in women's MMA. I agree. You can't. But I'm pretty aggressive in Jacqueline Amarim here at 9,000, mainly because of the roster construction and of how I'm boxing myself in with some of these salaries. I tell you, it's very concentrated. I'm not going to be doing a 150 max this week, Jason. And I always do a 150. I'm just not. I'm just going to stick to a 20 max this week. Not in love with it for DFS wise, but much more of a betting and pleasure type of card, just sitting back watching it, take a fight by fight, maybe putting together some parlays and whatnot. So yeah, it's going to be a really good card to watch, and I can't wait. If you guys are excited about it, please smash that like button. Let's get us over 100 likes. That'd be fantastic. In addition to that, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss anything. And the best part about it, join our free to join Discord. The link is in our description. We have tons of conversation. Be a part of the community, and it's nice to go back and forth and see where everybody else is on some of these fights.
Let's get our straight up fight picks here. First up, main event. Give me Izzy.
Give me Pereira.
I'll go Gilbert Burns.
Burns. Yeah, I'm going Burns.
Give me underdog number 1, Rob Font.
Give me Rob Font.
Give me underdog number 2, Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Yeah, no. Hell no. Give me Kevin Holland. Get out of here.
Give me Raul Rosas Jr.
Yeah, give me a Rosas. But I'm telling you, man, I think Christian, you got to circle him.
Give me underdog number 3, Chris Curtis.
No. Gastelum.
I will go Luna Pinheiro.
Yeah, we're so different, and it's okay. This is why, listen, there are weeks when y'all got to just do a block of lineups listening to Jason. And you got to do a block of lineups listening to me. And then you got to do a block of lineups blending it. Because my man Jason's hot some weeks. And I'm hot some weeks, too. But Jason's good, so.
2 weeks ago.
I'm going to go Waterson. 2
weeks ago, I screwed up. And I said, screw it. I'm going 100% Steven Peterson. Well, that really worked out.
Oh, don't, Jason. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
Oh, God. Straight up horrible.
He looked, it was like not the, and then he retires. It's like,
at that point, I didn't even look at my lineups anymore. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah,
there's no reason to look. Give me Joe Pyfer.
Okay. Give me Meerschaert.
It's Karl Williams, easy.
Karl Williams.
Godinez.
Bahamondes.
Nuremberg. And I'll go
Jacqueline O'Marine.
Get some Discord questions in here quick before we'll wrap things up here. Value plays under DK under 8K. For me, I even though I like Joe Pyfer, I mean GM3's got to be in that equation. Waterson-Gomez, I think's got to be in that equation. You brought up a great point on Christian Rodriguez, Rob Font. And in the main event, Alex, but hey, I think those are all kind of the ones that look at there.
Oh yeah, baby.
Let's see here. Sam with his usual question here. His over-under number is 7.5. We got 13 fights.
I'm saying under.
I think that's overall a good number. Yeah, I'd probably say lean up here. Top 2 cash. For me, if I was going to go top 2 cash.
Karl Williams. Wow. I just don't like how he took it on short notice. That's the only thing.
I mean, like, God, if Burns just wasn't 9,600, I'd say Burns.
Yeah.
I think Jacqueline's my other one.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Karl Williams as the 1. Number 2, I go. Damn, number 2 is tough. I'm going to go Alex Pereira, number 2.
Top 3 GPPs. He also, to me, I'm gonna label this fights that I'm targeting. GPPs, the main event. I would say Rosas Rodriguez would be another one that I would target there. Williams, Sherman, just because of the takedown side of Karl Williams, but also could Chase Sherman potentially catch him.
Yeah. Imagine Sherman's crazy.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Leverage plays. I think you got to look at Rob Font.
Mm-hmm.
If this is a decision card, Gilbert Burns. Not a lot of ownership there, and obviously that's all price. That's all price tag driven.
Exactly.
Top darts punts. A dart punt play for me is Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Gonna be C-Rod for me.
Yeah. Optimal plays. Oof.
I feel like Kevin Holland is. I know you don't like that.
Yeah. I look at Jacqueline just because of that takedown upside of what she could do potentially on the ground is the one that sticks out to me. So
I retract my statement. I say Jacqueline.
Yeah, I know someone's asked P about his PFL plays. I know he'll put that in Discord here later on today. So be sure to check that out. Of course, as always, appreciate you tuning in for our preview show for UFC 287. Of course, if you can show your support by hitting that thumbs up button, subscribing to the channel, I'd really appreciate that. If you're listening on the podcasting platforms, rate, review, subscribe. That we appreciate that as well. Pete, anything you want to leave the listeners with?
No, I mean, good luck. Good luck this weekend. Tune into the Discord, and Jason and I go back and forth talking to everybody. It's fun going fight by fight. And yeah, what cards we got coming up? We got some good ones coming up. I literally have no idea. You know me.
Well, you got the Holloway Arnold Allen fight is next week. I want to say.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I live it on a very week by week basis here, Pete, but I'll kind of throw it out there. Let's see here. Yeah. Holloway Allen is next week. The following week you have the Bellator cards in Hawaii, most notably the Saturday card. The Friday card absolutely sucks. Sorry, Bellator, but it's just the truth. Can we get literally a better card for the Fight for the Troops? Seriously, can we get a better card? The Saturday card is a really good
the
one.
worst card for the troops.
Oh God, dude.
They put a bad card for the troops.
Carmouche and Deanna Bennett is your main event. Tim Johnson, Syed Saloma is your co-main event. Arlene Blenko, Sarah McMahon, Carl Moore, Alex Palazzi.
What a thank you to.
But then the next night you have Stotts, Mix, Borg, Horiguchi, Aaron Pico's on that card.
Is that for the troops too?
No.
My God!
The Friday card is the one for the troops.
Oh my God! Really?
Dude. And then someone mentioned in the chat also Pavlich Blades comes up on the 22nd as well.
Yeah, I can't wait. Ooh, and we got Barboza, Billy Quarantillo next week. That's a hell of a fight. Did you talk to Billy yet?
I've not talked to Billy. I was going to hit him up today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Billy's done his whole camp here in Tampa.
Nice.
He hasn't gone up to Longo's spot for this one. He's been here in Tampa. He's just like you. He's a new father.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Him and his wife had a child. I want to probably say within the last 4 months. I want to say.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, he's been in fight camp.
It's still weird hearing that, but it's still like, oh shit, I am a dad. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy, bro. It's like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's hard to like. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like was that long ago? You FaceTime me and let me know. You know, it feels like was that long ago?
I know, crazy, brother.
But as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for the show here, and we'll be back next week to talk about that Arnold Allen Max Holloway card. And of course, be sure to check the show out on the podcasting platforms.